Hi, everybody. My name is Christa of Practical Astros, and this is the next edition of the Decan Walk that we've been doing. This time it's with Cancer. And so we're going to go through Cancer 1, 2, 3. We, meaning myself and my dear friend, Nightlight alum fellow Shawna. I will pass the mic over to her for her to introduce herself and what she does. But Shawna is one of my oldest friends in the Nightlight community now, and I'm really happy to kind of be in this sphere with you. So thanks again for doing the Cancer Decan with me. And if you want to give any Cancer qualifications and yeah, just give a little bit of what you do in the astrology community.
I'm Shawna. I go by Smart Asstro, two S's on the interwebs, except on, well, that would be on Threads, Twitter, my website, smartastro.com. And on IG, it's Figures of Heaven. Everything's linked in. I do have a Substack that I started as well, Substacks/Smart Astro. Krista and I went through Nightlight Astrology School in 22. We've continued ever since. We've been through year 1, just about to finish year 2, still working on year 3 together. We're doing the masterclass series together, so to speak.
Yeah.
I can't usually make it because it's during the work week, but it's fun to catch up. And we have a really awesome group chat going where we all just play tag on all the different astro happenings. So
Yeah.
thank you for having me.
Yeah.
When you asked me to do this, I get the Cancer qualifications because I do have my son. I'm a Cancer rising, Cancer sun at 15, North Node in Cancer as well. But I have an air trine, so I feel very airy. So, and I don't know if it's fortunate or unfortunate, maybe both. My moon is actually in Aquarius, so that's part of that air trine. Yeah, so
I think it's
I
because
wonder what
it's
we would talk about.
because it's the moon, it is fortunate, relating to fortune.
We'll go with that. Yes, we'll
Yeah,
take
yeah.
it. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to share screen here and we'll get going to this. Okay, so I'll present. And can you see my screen okay?
Yes.
Awesome.
I love this image too. It's really cool.
Yeah, and just, whenever you look at the decans within a sign, it's interesting just to see how they pair up together. Some of them feel out of place. This one doesn't. Venus, Mercury, and the moon are the decan rulers for Cancer. And when you look at this graphic for the spheres as they go down closer to the Earth, we have Venus over here. If you can see my little pointer, Venus, to the Mercury, and then the moon. And it's like bringing us home is what it feels like. And that's kind of, I feel like it's part of the Cancer influence. I mean, Cancer's domicile is the moon, its exaltation is Jupiter. The first decan is Venus. And I mean, it just has like, those are the benefics, those are the ones that make you feel good. Even Mercury sometimes,
Feel.
but
Mm-hmm.
but it's just nice. It feels like it's coming home before we get whipped back out and back on the wheel, and go up to Saturn for Leo 1. But I was thinking about this, and I've had this image kind of saved. It's used as a backdrop a lot because it just feels real powerful. And so I wanted to start with this before we jumped into the Cancer 1 decan. So yeah, I love those old block prints.
Yeah, it's a really beautiful image. I agree. It's intense too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but it's really beautifully done. But that red is so funny to me. It's very crabby.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Hmm.
And like we think of Cancer as, aquatic and lunar and soft and
Hmm.
comfortable, but it's a cardinal sign. And to me,
Yeah.
that cardinal energy is red. It's like the
Hmm.
action. Even like
Hmm.
Libra 1, Capricorn 1. I mean, Capricorn 1 makes sense or Capricorn in general, because Mars is the exaltation ruler Capricorn. So it has that
Right.
fire. But for Libra and Cancer, it takes a couple of steps to get there, but then you realize it's that action of the cardinal or tropical signs.
Yeah, inertia. Mm-hmm.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
So with that, it also just the visual itself, I'm just realizing kind of looks like if you got really close up to a crab's eyes, what
Yeah.
that might look
Yeah.
like.
Mm-hmm.
It
Yeah.
also
Actually,
looks
I
like
was
an
thinking,
owl.
oh yeah, I was thinking about the crab symbol actually last night, or the
Mm-hmm.
Cancer symbol, and where that came from. And definitely, if you're looking at a crab from the front, it for sure looks like that,
Yeah, you could totally
encasing
draw.
itself.
Yeah, you could
Hmm.
totally draw the kind of encased the 6 and 9. Just they look like just the tides and how they turn, and like
Yeah.
when a wave splashes on shore, it kind of has this like internal turning before it gets pulled back out into the ocean. And
Right.
um
Like a undercurrent. Hmm.
yeah, yeah, or like tiny little mini whirlpools. Um
Hmm.
and we'll get to kind of the significations of why Cancer, that hard shell and the soft gooey center, means like how that's expressed, but a lot of it I think is because the conditions or the environment, and when we think of the moon as environment in astrological delineations, a crab being kind of tossed around by its own environment, it would need to have that hard shell. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. Me. um Okay, so we get to start here. We ended Gemini 3 with that really, it's the Gemini decans are just hard. They're just tough. They're very swordsy. And we get through that, and then we are here at summer solstice, that turning of the light. And so do you want to lead us off and just start talking either about solstice or about the cards themselves? Like what when you see these images together, and I'll get to describing them in a minute. Shout out to Janine for the impulse to describe the cards for those who are visually impaired. But
Yes.
do you wanna
Yes.
just start speaking of just Cancer One and anything that comes to mind?
Yeah. I mean, you know, in my mind, when I was kind of going over what we might talk about, I was laughing because in the modern scheme, the beginning of the uh, zodiacal year is Aries. In the traditional, it's Cancer. But even in the modern, that puts, in modern theory, the fourth house gets associated with Cancer, and so um, I was just kind of laughing because I have such a drive toward that history. You don't know where you're going unless you know where you've been. And I didn't know if that was really a Cancer thing or
Mm,
if that was just me,
right.
you know. But as I'm kind of diving deeper and deeper and deeper into this rabbit hole, I feel like it is definitely um, a Cancer, excuse me, a Cancer Capricorn axis kind of a thing. So my point is I started looking and thinking about where we've been with Gemini.
Mm,
And I know you had a beautiful conversation with Emily, Alchemily,
yeah.
right? About Gemini, and I don't want to rehash any of that, but um, air, air being so quick and so movable and so fast. Um, it's the turning point going from Gemini to Cancer feels very much like that build up in a summer storm. You get the
Mm,
intense heat, you get the humidity, you get until finally you get that nice cool wind that comes through and breaks it, and then you get
yeah.
that thunderstorm. And
Yeah.
that's what always makes me think of Cancer and that time around the solstice, or leading up to it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and the thema mundi, Cancer is on the ascendant.
Mm-hmm.
That new year really was when, the heliacal rise of this dog star Sirius. And I think it's funny that you
Mm-hmm.
sat outside to be away from the sound of your own dog, but it's like in a way, like the howl of the dog, that bringing in of that energy of the dog. It's like the
Yeah.
announcement of it, and the flooding of the Nile, and the bringing of
Mm-hmm.
the fertility um, of the world, and the birth of the Holly King and the death of the Oak King, like all those, that like this moment in time is so filled to the brim, like pun intended, those two cups, with life and all the things that happened in life, including like dogs that want your attention. So I'll take a moment to just describe like what we're looking at. So, and this was brought to me by a client who is visually impaired, and she really was a great catalyst for tarot. As I use tarot and astrology both as divinatory tools, and just because you might have an inability to access them in a traditional way, we talk about aversions in astrology. Just because you might have planets in aversion to each other doesn't mean that they're not a part of you, or that doesn't influence your experience. There's still an influence in some ways. Sometimes you just have to kind of look harder to find it. And so when I wrote about the Gemini decans, I spent a good bit of time just describing the cards that they're associated with. And that in itself really helped kind of elucidate some of the meanings that had gone hidden to me, or hadn't pieced together because I hadn't taken the time to just describe them. So thanks to Janine for the prompt. And like from here on out, I'll do my best to just describe what we're looking at, so that people who are also, if you're just listening to this and you're not looking at a screen, you kind of get invited to what these cards mean. And especially for twos, I think twos across tarot are kind of invitation cards, because they are that first of the cardinal sign. So it's like an invitation to the next turning of the wheel. So do you want to, I'll describe Empress if you want to describe Chariot, and then we can talk about Two of Cups. Does that work? So the first decan of Cancer is, the decan ruler is Venus. And in Tarot, Venus is represented by the Empress card. So the Empress is the third card. The Tarot begins with the Fool, is the 0 card. And then we go to the Magician as the 1 card. And then the High Priestess is the 2 card. And then the Empress is kind of like the child. It's like the first thing, that secret third thing that is created when you add 1 and 2 together. You get that multiplicity of 3. So it's like the first thing that's born. So there's this creative essence of Venus. The aspect related to Venus is the sextile. And this was kind of a revealing aha moment that I had yesterday in the group chat, reading Demetra George's book, really trying to kind of refine my understanding of what some older text talked about sextiles. And when you have a sextile, that's when planets are basically 2 signs away from each other. When like Taurus and Gemini are next to each other, planets in Taurus can't see by traditional sight the planets in Gemini. But when those planets in Gemini move to Cancer, now they're 2 signs away. Now they can create a sextile to each other. It's the first aspect that planets can make. And when we think about, especially Venus is like the goddess of love, and it's about harmony. But there's also this excitement with Venus, like there's something new. It's like a honeymoon phase aspect. It's like, what can we create together? What kind of future, what does the future hold for us, sort of a thing. And you get that because you've just exited the aversion state where you can't connect, or there's been some sort of alienation or some sort of a disconnect. And so the fact that Venus represents the sextile in a sense, and the connection that a sextile can make has this like really kind of freshness to it, or this excitement of like, what can we create to be harmonic with each other. I just feel like is like just a nice, it's one of those like circular lessons that kind of comes back to you. The longer you study astrology, you see how much harmony there is in astrology, and how frequently your mind is blown, speaking for myself. And even if they're little aha moments like that you just share in a group chat, or it's something that you end up writing a dissertation on, I just feel like it's endlessly amplifyingly mind-blowing. So with that prelude, the Empress card. The Empress is Venus, and we're looking at the Rider-Waite-Smith deck. So there's a lot of yellow. The sky is yellow, but usually that just represents like a really bright day. It's like a fully illuminated card. There's some
Mhm.
forest and some trees kind of on the horizon in the back. There is the element of water is kind of traveling through the trees and dripping down near her feet. One of the things that I like that ties the Empress card to the High Priestess card is, and the High Priestess card, there's a veil behind her that's full of pomegranates, and
Mhm.
similar cloth is now on the Empress as her garb, as her gown. It's a
Mhm.
long white gown with pomegranates all over it. um,
I love how they're actually in that shape of Venus too, the Venus glyph.
oh yeah, yeah, I had not even
Their little
considered that.
stalk with the leaves.
Hmm. Yeah, they're
Just
all
fully
kind of
covered.
upside down. Yeah, that's a really
Hmm.
good catch. So the pomegranate's kind of conjuring up Persephone to a degree, but just that the red jewel of a pomegranate seed has that life giving capacity to it.
Hmm.
Um, so she's sitting there. She's sitting on some really comfortable pillows. She looks very luxurious.
Hmm.
Um, there's also some sort of patterned pillow, that black with the yellow on the very back, that also looks kind of like her Venus sign, but as like a repeated pattern on a pillow. She has stars as a crown around her head, little white stars that act as a crown. She has either stars or some sort of jewels around her neck. She's seated there. She looks very comfortable. She looks like she's wearing like a muumuu, honestly, which was funny because I found myself
Yeah.
a gold satin muumuu yesterday while the
Hmm.
moon was in
Right.
Cancer. Um, she has a heart shaped rock, looks like at her feet with the Venus glyph on it, and at her feet are is like a close up of a field of golden grain. So it's like a super fertile card. I will say she,
Hmm.
with her right hand, she's holding up this globe on, it looks kind of like a scepter, like a short scepter, but just like a globe or a wand, some sort of, it honestly looks like the Venus symbol, um, but as kind of like an element of the power that she holds. Um, so yeah,
Yeah, and
that's,
it looks like a wand, but very different from the suit of wands too.
yes, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
it does look magical in that sense, but definitely very different.
Yeah. It's almost like it's like a wand with like a crystal ball affixed to the top.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah,
So yeah, that's the Empress. Do you want to describe the
yeah,
chariot for the
yeah,
listeners?
sure. With the chariot, they both share the bright yellow background, um, which I think is interesting when you take into account that it's the Decan ruled by Mercury. It feels very quick, it feels very warm, it feels very heated. But there is a man also, he's seated as well, of course, in the chariot. It looks a little bit more like, um, it almost looks like a stone front
Mm-hmm.
to me, interestingly. But the symbology on it, I'll get to in a second. But um, he is also wearing a crown that has a star on it, and what appears to be armor, also decked in yellow. Um, with hers, I noticed that she has like either a pearl necklace on,
Mm-hmm.
where he contrastly has the armor, but they're shaped as crescent moons over his shoulders. So I don't know if it's decorative or otherwise. Breastplate is yellow. The crescent moons are yellow as well. And his chariot cover are curtains pulled back in blue with white stars. Um, and it looks like he is riding away from uh, castles. Are they waterfalls behind there? Is it yellow waterfalls?
To me, it looks like he's
Um,
crossed over a bridge, and those
oh, those are his
yellow, those
wheels.
are his wheels. And
Those
in
are
other,
his
yeah,
wheels.
other
Yes.
depictions, it looks like concrete wheels, like he's like rolling around in his little crab.
Uh-huh. Yeah, yeah. I mean, the front of the chariot does look like stone.
Hmm.
And it looks like it's being pulled by two dogs at rest. Dogs with human faces. But one is black and one is white. So I think that really kind of plays into the one become two and the yin yang feel of it. It has a lingam yoni on the front, which is also very suggestive of two becoming one as opposed to one becoming two. And then what look like Mercury's wings on the front of the stone front of the chariot. What's funny though is he looks very at rest. The creatures pulling his chariot look very at rest, but everything else looks quick or hurried because of the yellow to me.
Yeah, and I like the wings. The wings on so the chariot in Tarot represents the sign of Cancer, while the Empress is representing Venus, the decan ruler of this. Mercury is the next decan ruler. And so when we think of the chariot as Cancer, it's like we're thinking about one. I like that the Sphinxes throw that nod to the flooding of the Nile with the rise of Sirius, of kind of that the Egyptian celebration of like the earth is reborn. It's symbolic of the Thema Mundi as the Cancer rising, the Sirius star rising. But the fact that there's these black and white sphinxes, like the headpiece of the Sphinx is black and white stripes, and it's like that nod that Pamela Coleman Smith kind of threw to just the Egyptian celebration of Sirius, but also just the black and white alternating color feels like that moment of solstice, of the sun is at its highest. On the day before the sun was rising, the next day after this, the sun will fall. It's like that moment of stark contrast. And also when the sun is highest, it casts very clear shadows. There's not a lot of gray ambiguity. It's like very stark shadows. And so there's these wings on the chariot's front with a yellow center. And then when we look at the two of cups as the decan, there's also a winged figure at the very top. So it's two wings spread out with a lion face in the center. And then below that is a caduceus with, the spiraling snakes. And then we have two figures that are kind of facing each other, that they look like man and woman, each holding a cup in their hand. And this card is called the Lord of Love. I mean, it's quite a stark contrast from Gemini. It's that invitation of recognition of another. And just like all the twos are like an invitation to that suit, like the ace of a suit is like the pure essence, but then the two of a suit is like that invitation to, okay, what is this? And that's kind of how it feels with the Two of Cups. It's like when you first meet someone's gaze and there's this spark of like, oh, like, who are you? Or what is this going to be like? Or there's something there, like, I want to explore more. It's like this excitement of things have changed. Something has turned. Like, you can't go back after meeting that gaze. It's going to haunt you if you don't ask about it. It's like you're kind of surrendering to the circumstance of the moment. And that in this card, I mean, you've got Venus and you've got Cancer as these. I mean, sometimes combinations of tarot, major arcana, display like a really confusing pip card, but this one is not the case. It's like you've got the Empress and the Chariot, and then you have this beautiful Lord of Love decan and Cancer one. So it's like, after all the Gemini we went through, now we get to just kind of have that same excitement of riding as high as we can on the sun, with the beauty of Venus and the watery element of Cancer. It's just like this really lovely ease of kind of returning to something new is kind of what it speaks for me.
Yeah, thank you for correcting me. I jumped ahead of myself. The Chariot always makes me think of Mercury, and I wonder if it's coming out of Gemini, like it looks like he's leaving what he's known, and moving on to something new. But maybe taking a pause, just like a car nowadays. You're sitting and going nowhere fast kind of thing, or doing nothing really fast,
Hmm.
something like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
And forgive
Yeah.
me, I might have to put sunglasses on because the sun's literally coming over the building, like right on my forehead. Okay.
Well, and I've heard the chariot described before as like a moving temple, like that
Mhm,
the chariot is has left the castle, has left the empire to
mhm,
the circumstances have changed. The waves have kind of thrown him out, or he's chosen to find a different tide pool or whatever analogy
mhm.
you want to use. But he's
Yeah.
taking the bit of his protection, the bit of his temple with him, and it seems
Mhm.
pretty clumsy and clunky to like roll on concrete wheels in a concrete vessel with two not very I mean they're stout looking, but they don't look like they're real athletic little sphinx dog
Right.
people.
Yeah, very
um
restful.
it's like,
Yeah,
are
very
they all just
restful.
like hovering? Is no one actually moving at all? um but yeah, to combine with the empress there to make that two of cups, it's like, okay, well, what sort of influence does each one have on the other? um
Yeah.
well, what do you have to say for the two of cups just in
Uh,
itself?
Well, what strikes me is how different they're, I mean, one looks to me very clearly traditionally feminine with the
Mhm,
longer gown and the, draping clothes, and the other looks very traditionally masculine.
mhm.
Um, what caught my eye though is, are they clubs on his cloth? Are they, it looks like clubs to me. Um,
Oh yeah. Tell you what
yeah,
he looks
like, is
like.
it a nod?
He looks like the fool. That's what he looks like to me.
Oh, yes, yeah. And again, another kind of nod to where we've been, I think,
Hmm.
with Gemini, right?
Yeah.
Um, but there's this kind of um, sweetness passing between the two of them, and kind of a demure look on her face. And yeah, he does really look like the Fool card, doesn't he?
Well, would
Um,
clubs be considered cups like in playing cards, or clubs cups, or are clubs coins?
Hearts.
Oh, hearts. That's
I
right.
I
Yeah.
think clubs are actually wands, aren't they?
I don't know. Obviously, I'm like, what
Ah,
are they?
which would which would be fire, but yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, yeah, I'm not sure, but the other, I mean, there's such a stark contrast too with the background itself. It's very
Mm.
fertile and comfortable and even passive in a way.
Hmm.
Um, but I love that she's got the green little crown on, and are they poppies on his, or roses
They
maybe?
maybe roses or small apples is what sometimes they look like to me. She had it
Oh,
looks like
mhm.
looks like laurel, like the
Yes,
laurel
yes,
crown. Yeah.
yes. Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I love this card just for the temporary peace that it seems to provide, and just that um there's something about Cancer. There's a involuntary momentum that just
Mhm.
continues to push Cancer forward. And that's why it's
Yeah,
it's kind of funny to me of like looking at the Chariot card. He's in like the most cumbersome vehicle of concrete
right.
wheels and like out of
Yeah.
shape sphinxes. So maybe they aren't having to exert their own energy. Maybe they're just riding that water that's just below the chariot itself. I mean, the sphinxes look like they're on the ground, but there's this sense of that momentum, the tides, the fortune will move Cancer, regardless of what effort it puts in. It really its talent is to surf or sail and not
Mhm.
just plod along and overwork itself. The opposing sign
Yeah.
Cancer or Capricorn does that. um uh it gets master's degrees in overworking. Cancer can just be like,
Yeah.
I will do the opposite. And so where that meets with the two of cups is like, okay, well, we're riding these waves of fortune, and the Empress is here as our decan goddess. She's sitting in the throne room of the moon. And so there is ease and tranquility and peace. And so when you have that, you open the space up for falling in love or meeting a new friend or finding something that just sparks that that turning of fortune, but through Venus's watchful eye. That's how it feels. Like this card feels very, very lucky. And I feel lucky because I have my Venus in this decan. So it feels like doubly like I love that this card has that it's temporary. That's the thing about Cancer is everything is temporary. I mean, it's true with all the
Yeah.
signs, but Cancer knows it.
Yeah.
And
There's
it
a lot of
just,
anticipation in this decan.
mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What's
Yeah.
next? What's next? Yeah.
Right. Right.
And so with that, I'm going to go to what's next because that's one of the other favorite cards in tarot that people have collectively is this Three of Cups. It's like what came after the Two of Cups. That really lovely card is this Three of Cups. And here's where we bring in the Magician. The Magician now is sitting in the lunar temple. The Chariot's still here as Cancer, but now we have that influence of Mercury right there in the middle, like Mercury likes to be. And this really lovely Three of Cups card. So I'll describe the Magician, and then if you want to talk about the Three of Cups. So we have the Magician is the second card. If you use the full as the 0 for the major arcana, but it's the number 1 card. So he has the number 1 at the top. There's this garland of roses that drips down on the top corners. The Magician is wearing a white garb with a red cloak on top, and he has the infinity symbol over his head. He has like this nice little 80s white sweatband on his hair too, which always cracks me up. He's holding a wand in his hand, but like a magic wand, not necessarily the wand of the suit of wands. And then below him is red roses and white lilies kind of growing up. And the flowers themselves usually are symbolizing kind of just the magic in tarot. But the important thing is what the Magician is doing here. So he has a table in front of him, and on the table are all 4 suits. So there's a pentacle or coin or disc, there's a cup or chalice, there's a sword, and there's a wand. And the Magician combines all 4 of those to do whatever he's meant to do, but bringing in all of the elemental magic of those 4 to have at his toolkit. And so with that, do you want to describe this lovely Three of Cups? The Three of Cups reminds me of our group chat. This is what the card that always comes to mind.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's pretty accurate. We've got a solid fourth now. But
Mm-hmm.
3 women, long, luxurious gowns, all in celebration, flower crowns, draping fabrics down their bodies, comfortable shoes, lifting their cups in a toast, or they almost look like they're dancing,
Mm-hmm.
in a trio. Sky blue background, and it's got the vegetation all around them. It's very celebratory. And I think one is even holding maybe some grapes or
Yeah,
something.
that's what it looks like.
Yeah, yeah, very, very celebratory, very happy card. And it just looks like camaraderie. It looks like your, modern day summer barbecue or something.
Yeah, yeah.
Or a night out with the girls kind of a thing. Yeah, it so much happiness in that card.
What I like about this one, like compared to the one prior, we have the 2 people that are like dramatically standing in front of each other, being like, "Who are you?" And but there's still clear
Mhm.
separation from those other 2 people in that first card. And this
Mhm.
card, this is all kind of like one being. It's like there's not too much separation even in the clothes between the 3 characters.
Mhm.
It's still, I mean, you can kind of make out whose arm is who, but all of the arms that have their cups raised they're kind of overlapping and entwined. So it's almost like this feels like collaboration. The Three of Coins
Yeah.
also has this like real collaborative quality to it.
Mhm.
The Three of Cups is like this essence of collaboration, or when you merge, like the magician taking those elements, when you kind of merge them together, what comes from it. And I was watching that HBO Max show Shogun. I was kind of
Mhm.
catching up. I started watching it and then took a pause. And there's this moment in the second to the last episode where this dramatic story happens, and they temporarily have success. And after this success, they a lot of the guards just get drunk. They're like this release of like, we can finally relax and just celebrate. But it's on the eve of like kind of a worse day the next day, but they don't care, they don't
Mhm.
know. They're kind of at this peak of relaxation, and like this is like the eat and drink for tomorrow we die card too. It's like, you know get it while it's hot. There's time. Time keeps moving on. You don't know where your fortunes are going to
Yeah.
be tomorrow, so it's like really a be here now, in the moment, celebrate, hang out with your sisters, just that fruit is ripe only at a certain point. And I love that she's got the
Yeah.
grapes at her hand. It confuses me that
Yeah.
there's grapes and pumpkin,
Yes.
which in most times of the year in Cancer, you don't have both at the same time, but
Mm-mm.
that's just my plant nerd coming out. It's just a symbol
Yeah.
of like abundance.
Mhm.
This is called the Lord of Abundance. So it definitely screams abundance here. But
Yeah.
with that temporal nature of the chariot, it's like, get it while it's hot, because
Yeah.
for tomorrow we may die. There's that
Yeah.
darkness of Cancer that I think most people are kind of familiar with. They're used to Cancer kind of being the Debbie Downer or the Eeyore sometimes, of like,
Mhm.
don't forget, things will also suck. It's because they know, they have this
Yeah.
intuitive knowing of like, because they eventually do, and then they come back, and then they get worse, and then they get better, and then they get worse. It's that
Well,
fluctuation of the tide.
yeah. I mean, Cancer too is like the culmination of Cancer, right? So it's the
Mhm.
peak of the sun. It's the sun's highest point. It's the fruit is the ripest. It is the peak. It's the fullest Cancer part. And when you acknowledge that much life, you have to acknowledge the opposite. There will be that fall. There will be that colder day that's coming. There will be, so let's take a little breather, have some fun, enjoy the sunshine.
Mhm.
And these three, they look like besties for decades kind of a thing. They, collaboration, absolutely. They all know their position with each other. Like they know their boundaries. They know each other probably
Mm.
better than most.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering about the pumpkin. The pumpkin feels very Jupiterian to me in a sense.
Huh.
So do you think that, I mean, could that be a nod to Jupiter and Jupiter's exaltation?
Maybe, yeah. I mean, if we look at, Mercury as the Decan Lord, the opposing sign of that
Mm,
is Jupiter, like Jupiter rules
right.
the opposing signs of Mercury. And, yeah, I mean, maybe having the pumpkin there, it's like looking at um like later in like 6 months from now, it will be the middle of winter. But the nod that, what's ahead is, there's still abundance to be had. Look, we're going to have pumpkins in the fall. We're going to have
Mhm.
but it's an eventual death. Pumpkins signify, when we make jack-o'-lanterns, we make kind of scary things out of the corpses
Right.
of these squash. So it does have
Yeah.
kind of this
Yeah.
like macabre essence to it. But I think, didn't we look up the significations of pumpkins and squash were Jupiterian? It's like big and
Right.
and abundant.
It's
So yeah,
full, it's ripe, yeah.
yeah. And I think of grapes as Jupiterian too. It's very uh it
Lust.
reminds me of Bacchus and Jove. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I wonder if it is like this little like fertile nod
Tip of the
to,
hat. Yeah.
yeah, to Jupiter.
Yeah.
That's
Mm-hmm.
great. Yeah, I mean, this is like, yeah, like you said, it's the middle of Cancer. So it's all the Cancerian things and whatever blend they come out. And it's, during this time, in those middle 10 degrees of Cancer, it's like, what are you doing during the summer with your besties? And what sort of
Mhm.
elements are you blending together? Because the magician doesn't have to blend all of the elements at the same time. It's like he's picking and choosing what he's going to make, for alchemy. And if we look at temperance as the Jupiter card, temperance is that mixture of the two. And the temperance card has that the angel with two cups kind of blending two elements. And
Mhm.
um and I think of the magician and temperance together as these, of creating alchemy. And these three cups here, it's like, well, what three ingredients are you kind of mixing together to see what comes? and and I think the best way to do that is in collaboration with
Mhm.
with others, and enjoy it and enjoy company. This is the summer barbecue, at least in the northern hemisphere.
Right, right.
I would love to go to a summer barbecue where I see this scene happen. I would love to be a
Mhm.
part of this reenactment of this card.
Mhm.
um, I'll put that on my bucket list for the summer. So, yeah, I mean, I think when you pull this card, that's usually like a very clear yes to something. It's like, just
Mhm.
do it, just get it while it's hot. Um, I keep saying that phrase, and I feel like I should put some context to it just from my own life. The woman that married us, my husband and I, she's a Methodist priest, and she has this dream that is past. And I guess the dream part is kind of coming in through Cancer and the moon. She has this dream that is passed through her family, and only one family member holds the dream at a certain point. And the dream is of a woman holding a platter of fried fish, walking down a hallway, and the woman says, "Get it while it's hot." That's what that's the entirety of the dream. And
Wow.
when a person wakes up and they have that dream, they know that somebody in their family has died. It's like the
Wow.
dream is like a living entity that passes from family members. And when the woman, who married us, she had the dream for the first time. And she knew when she had that dream, she woke up and she knew that her sister, who had been the previous carrier of that dream, she knew her sister had died, because
Wow.
her sister was the one that would have the dream about other family members. And when she had the dream, she knew immediately. And it was true, her sister has died. And so now this woman is the carrier of that dream. And if you think about it, I mean, one, it's wild. Dream work is wild
Yeah.
anyway. And to have kind of this living entity of a dream that kind of is passed from one family member to another. But what is the woman saying? She's saying, get it while it's hot. And it's like, eat the fish while it's hot because it's going to get
Mhm.
cold. And that's what this card
Mhm.
reminds me of. It's like, just celebrate, take the win, enjoy your time, let the harvest rot on the ground if you have to, if it means that you're going to celebrate with friends. And there is this sadness and melancholy to it, but at the same time, there's just this beauty of celebrating while we have the
Mhm.
time. Like, get life while it's hard. Carpe diem, carpe noctem. And that's that
Mhm.
duality of Cancer. Is, Cancers can enjoy the best of the best. And yeah, you might say it's because they're thinking of what they don't like. I don't like cheap food, or I don't like cheap fabric, or like that makes me upset because
Yeah.
it's not ideal, because they also have that, they hold that ideal in their mind too, of what they like to enjoy.
Yeah.
Do
Yeah.
you have
There's a you're talking about that ancestral passing on that dream from one family member to another. Number one, what a gift.
hmm,
Like how amazing is that, even to be on the, in the periphery of it like you are. That's really cool. Um, but as you're talking about, wanting the best food, and, you know, I think a Cancer stereotype is the cooking, right?
Mhm.
Um, yeah, in the kitchen, kind of pregnant and cooking in the barefoot in the kitchen, the big full belly, the full moon, the welcoming the mom. I laughed at myself. Small tangent. We're going to Pride Fest or Pride Parade today.
Mhm.
I'm taking Cam, and I got a new shirt, free mom hugs,
Oh yeah. Cancer
and
should
that's
wear
what I
those
threw
all the
on.
time.
Yeah, apparently. So I laughed at myself, but um, what I was getting at is there's the dinner. Someone's got to make dinner after you lay someone to rest too.
Yeah.
Someone's got to take care of the everyday, the mundane, take care of those who are mourning. Um, and so I also thought of there's that flip side of life and death. And, even a woman who's giving birth, that right there is the precipice of life and death,
Mm.
not just for the baby, but also for the mother.
Mhm.
Um, it's very intense, it's very not just heated, but it's um, the mercurial quickening. It's the it's a threshold. It's
Yeah.
a threshold, and
Yeah.
like you mentioned before, the chariot showing that starkness of that threshold, that peak.
Is this your ascendant decan?
No, Cancer 1
Cancer one.
is my
Um,
ascendant. My sun is at 15.
oh, right. Okay. So, I mean,
Mm-hmm.
even thinking about like, okay, we'll get to it a little bit in the next second with the moon and the chariot as like the most saturated Cancerian decan, right? But this middle one, magician, Mercury loves to travel between worlds. He finds his joy in the
Mm-hmm.
first house for that reason, so that he can like
Mm-hmm.
one kind of be in line of sight of most every other house, and but being able to travel between the worlds and thinking about like what you said about someone's got to make dinner at the wake or the funeral.
Mm-hmm. Right.
um, the idea of nourishment as communication, you
Mm-hmm.
know, Jupiter exalts in Cancer because it's like Jupiter is that life giver of
Mm-hmm.
abundance, of everything to be in order so that we can continue to grow collectively. You know, that feels very Jupiterian. But using food to communicate, it's like that's what this card also feels like. It's like
Mm-hmm.
Mercury, the magician, as a communicator, as the one that wants to travel between worlds to deliver messages. It's not like he's just got wanderlust, like he's there as the messenger and
Purpose, yeah.
delivering lost souls to the dead and bringing in new information to those that are living from the
Mm-hmm.
gods. And just thinking about, there's that book Like Water for Chocolate, and they made a movie about it, and this scene in the movie was really, it was well done compared to the written text. But when there's this woman and she's crying as she's making mole and she feeds it to her guests and they all become mournful and they all start crying themselves, it's because she put that information into the food. She
Mm-hmm.
communicated
Yeah.
her sorrow and her heartbreak
Yeah.
into the food, and they all took it. And if you think of
Mm-hmm.
just that food as a way to communicate, food
Mm-hmm.
as love. I know plenty of people who have Cancer placements that use
Mm-hmm.
food as like a vessel for expression.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Definitely cooking for your family at the end of the day, or, inviting people over for Thanksgiving, or, there's another nod to the pumpkin.
Mm-hmm.
It's very home, it's very mom, it's very, um, there's a sense of belonging too, I think,
Mm-hmm.
that can come from that. Um, yeah. Yeah.
And also just like the traditional foods, like we talked about this before. If you aren't connected to the people that birthed you, if you aren't connected to your ancestors, if
Right.
you for whatever reason, I mean, any reason that there's a disconnect, a way to reconnect is just, okay, well, if I don't have traditional Thanksgiving recipes for one reason or another, starting that tradition, starting those roots, because the food itself, smell and taste, like conjure up such like instant memory.
Memories. Yeah.
And so
Mm-hmm.
like even if you don't have that like there's a desire to create that, because we, as like sentient bodies, we want to hold that sort of memory. um,
Yeah.
Speaking of memory, I'm going to go to the moon high priestess card here, which is
Mhm.
Cancer 3, because I feel like it does kind of tie in, as they do. But when you were talking about someone's got to be there to make food for the wake, make food for the funeral. If we
Yeah.
think of, okay, the high priestess card here, and I'll describe it in a minute, but the high priestess card here, um, is the major arcana representing the moon, as much as the moon card is. I feel like the moon is like on the backside of the high priestess card. Like if you go through the veil of the high priestess, what you look at is the world of the moon. And
Mhm.
if we think of just basic lunar phases of dark, like you see like the trio of the moon, like you see necklaces
Right.
and paintings and imagery of like
Right.
a crescent moon facing one way, a full moon, and a crescent moon facing the other way, as symbolized by the changes. That's what came up when you were talking about making food for the funeral. It's like the veil is
Mhm.
very thin when you are giving birth for the mother and the baby. And it feels like
Yeah.
things can go in and out really quick.
Yeah.
Having nearly died in labor of my own son, I will say that that's a very real thing. Like the veil is
Mhm.
like, it's thin and it's palpable. You can almost see it. And then when someone dies, it's the same. There's this thing in the air. There's this moment where everything feels very different. It's like that just before a thunderstorm or in the middle of a
Yes.
hurricane. There is like something electric in the air that feels like it's like out of time. And then in the middle of that is life. It's like that threefold. And Cancer is there to hold the memory and to share the communication and celebrate while we can. That's that fullness of it. Yeah. Whew.
Well, cancer is heavy, right?
Yeah. That's why I love it.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you want to do the Empress then? And
Why don't you, if you, I'll describe, because I really like the Four of Cups. If you want to
yeah,
do
that's fine. I'll do
the
the Empress or the High
high
Priestess. Yeah.
priestess, yeah.
Yeah. While you're talking about the veil, I was looking at this card. So she's draped in, beautiful blue fabric, seated on what looks like a stone chair.
Hmm.
She has a large crescent moon, um, kind of half under her fabric, her dress that looks almost like clouds, the way it's
Yeah.
draped over the moon. Um, Two pillars, one on either side, and kind of one is a real light gray, one is a very dark gray. I love that it's not black and white, but it still gives that impression of that stark difference between the
Hmm.
two. Um, and then, to be honest, I don't know what the initials indicate on this one, the B and the
It's
J.
like Boaz
Um,
and I'll look it up and see. Yeah, it's
yeah, I
Boaz.
didn't
Yeah.
recall what those were. Yeah, but she's also, is that a scroll?
Yeah.
Yeah, a scroll in her hand. Um, and it's unclear to me what it says. It could
It
be,
says Torah, but
I
some
was
people
gonna say it
think
could be a
it's
nod to
like,
Torah.
or
Yeah,
Tarot. It could be like the letters that spell Torah, which means law.
yeah.
It's like the
Okay.
the 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 scroll of the set of rules that we have in a sense.
Yeah, yeah. Um, yeah, and then it looks like there's no real back to her chair. Like her seat, she's just very poised and very stiff at the same time. Um, Kind of stone faced. Everything else in the card feels very stone as well. Um, Her crown has a large full moon flanked by what it looks to me like a crescent moon on either side.
Yep.
Um,
Yeah.
and then again, there's no back to the seat, but she has what looks like, um, it looks like a piece of fabric or a curtain, um, covered in pomegranates, covered in life, it looks like, vegetation. And it's unclear as to whether or not it's a solid piece of fabric or if you could just walk through it as if it didn't exist. And interestingly, that's, you were just talking about a veil and, the veil between worlds being so thin.
But she as the guardian of that veil. That's
Yeah,
yeah.
she's the gatekeeper there. There's a large white cross on her. It looks like a scarf that's, very delicately draped across her chest. And again, that stone face, it's just reality is what it looks like to me.
Okay, so the letter B stands for Boaz and J stands for Yakin, the names given to the two main pillars of the temple in Jerusalem.
Mm.
This is from the Rachel Pollack book, 78 Degrees of
Okay.
Wisdom.
Mm-hmm.
And she writes, the dark Boaz stands for passivity and mystery, while Yakin symbolizes action and consciousness, just that foil of the dark and the light.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a really beautiful card.
Yeah, I love this card.
Yeah.
I like that the her blue cloak and um her dress and whatever that is she is wrapped in clouds or water
Yes.
or both, and I love how they
Both,
kind of
maybe.
pool at her feet with
Mm-hmm.
that intertwined crescent moon that is there, like capturing her essence. There's the Virgin de Guadalupe um, depiction of the Virgin Mary, and it reminds me of this card a lot, mostly because she does have that crescent moon at her feet too. And yeah, just as the gatekeeper of that veil, to get beyond that veil to see what's on the other side, you do have to kind of ask her, you know, ask her how
You
you
have to
do
get
that.
through her. Yeah.
Yeah,
You have to get
yeah,
permission, even.
yeah,
Um,
exactly.
yeah. Ooh, what a wild thought to think that, when your body gives out, you have to ask permission to
Mm,
continue.
yeah, I mean, because that she's at that threshold, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And when we say the veil
Yeah.
is thin, like maybe the veil is peppered with pomegranates.
Yeah.
And it almost looks like palm trees too. There's
Yeah.
more to the pomegranates on that, or laurel leaf. I mean, there's a lot of pattern on that fabric, a lot of
There is.
information
Yeah.
to go through before you're able to see what's on the other side.
Awareness.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, love the high priestess. The high
Yeah.
priestess is the moon, and the moon is the domicile of Cancer. So we have Cancer and the moon basically here as the moon as the Decan Lord of its own domicile. So it's definitely at
Yeah.
home. And the pip card that we have in the middle is the Four of Cups. And this card just cracks me up because on one hand, you have a character, he's sitting cross-legged with his arms crossed like a little defiant child.
Mm-hmm.
He's sitting at the base of a tree, which, you know, can kind of harken back to Siddhartha sitting below the banyan tree for enlightenment. That was something that Susan Chang referred to. But he's sitting
Mm-hmm.
at the base of a tree on a slight little hill, and below him, within reach, are three upright cups. So there's in the cup suit, there's a lot of um, symbolism that you can look at if the cups are upright or if they've spilled over. Usually, when you get to the fixed water, the discordant Scorpio cards, there's going to be some tipped over cups. But this one, all
Mm-hmm.
the cups are upright. You have three upright cups. You can't tell if there's any liquid in them, but they're upright. So they have the capacity to hold. And then there's this disembodied hand coming out of a cloud, floating next to the character who has another cup getting, it's almost like he's pushing it closer to the character, like, here you go. And
Just take it.
when I was looking at this
Mm-hmm.
card, I I was reminded of that children's book, Go Dog Go.
Mm-hmm.
And there's this recurrent character through the card where there's this female pink dog who has like these crazy hats, and she'll like interrupt the scene and be like, now do you like my hat? and like nobody pays attention to her. She's trying to get the attention of this one particular dog. And so throughout the story, she like gets crazier and crazier and crazier hats. And at the very end, she's like, now do you like my hat? And it's like so over the top. And the guy dog that she's trying to get the attention, he's like, I like your hat. And that's what this hand reminds me of. It's like, what about this? Like, do you like this cup? Or what about this cup? Do you like this cup? And there's the sense of, if you're paying attention, there's so much offered to you. And if you don't just focus on, maybe those cups are empty and you've already drank them and now you're kind of spoiled a little bit or ungrateful. I mean, this card has like everything literally handed to it. It's got Cancer and the moon at home in Cancer. It's like you've had as much as you're ever going to want. And so maybe there's not a spark to have more. But the flip side of that is you have enough. You have your needs met. You don't need any more right now. Like you're sitting now in contemplation below the banyan tree to see what the meaning of it all is. So it's not petulant child that is ungrateful. It's like, I don't really need any more right now. So it's this, like, what is it? When you pull this card, that's like the question that comes up. Like, are you being ungrateful, or are you dealing with things that are not material anymore, but trying to derive the meaning from all of the material things that have happened around you or to you? And yeah, the body language of him just always makes me think of some sort of little kid that just doesn't want apple juice. I want orange juice, you know?
Pouting a little bit. Yeah. Yeah. The other thing, and I don't want to be flippant or anything, but smart ass. Um, it could almost look like he's hungover and like mentally staring at the cups going, why did I drink all those? And
Yeah,
then,
I'll go
there's
back to this
someone,
card. Go back to that card.
right, right. Yes, the celebration went a little too far, and is there someone whispering, well, here, have a little more?
Yeah.
But not to be callous, but in general, I think it definitely is that, do I really need more? Do I have to keep working? Now, do I have to get up and work more to maintain what I have? It almost looks like he's in pause. So for whatever reason, whether he celebrated a little too hard, or he's being ungrateful and pouting, or he's
He's had
just
enough.
forgotten how much he does have. And that's that mysterious hand that's going, but you still have this, yeah,
Or
I
have you
think you
tried
could.
this one? How about you try this one? Or what about this
Right,
one? Yeah.
right. Yeah, definitely.
I mean, this card is called the Lord of Luxury. So it's like,
Yeah.
what is luxury?
Hmm.
There's that Deepak Chopra book, the uh, abundance book or whatever. And
Yeah.
he talks about having like going away from getting out of a poverty mindset into an abundance mindset.
Yeah.
And, what is luxury? And luxury is having all of your needs met easily. And that's kind of what this card is. It's like luxury doesn't have to be, you know, um, a house in Palm Springs and a private jet that flies you there. It can be,
Yeah.
like you have a fridge full of food and you have friends coming
Right.
over. And that's kind of all you
Right.
need right now. And you don't need that extra cup handed to you. It's like you have more than enough. Your cup is actually running over. Um,
Mhm.
but the disembodied hand, so it is literally like a cloud popped out of the sky. There's nothing else in the sky. It's a blue sky, but there's this little cloud with a little hand holding an oversized cup right next to the character. And that's what also it looks like the Ace of Cups has that same image. It's like it's just a hand holding a cup. And then the Rider-Waite-Smith, it has like the cup is flowing over in the ace. It's like all the water is pouring out. There's a dove coming out. I mean, it's like it looks like the Holy Grail, like all the wisdom of cups. So I wonder if that's what is kind of being offered here, hearkening back to if you have enough material, then what's the next thing? Because water is emotion. Water is not pentacles. It's not earthly thing. It's the emotional intelligence. It's the emotional ability to communicate. So that's why it makes me wonder about the meaning of this card, as finding meaning and things that are not on the ground, but things that are kind of gifted to you from spirit, having that hand come out of the cloud, and being that emotional spiritualism.
Yeah. Finding the meaning in the relationships and in the conversation and as opposed to the tangible,
Mm-hmm.
maybe.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't talk
The
about
other thing,
cups as water. Do you want to speak a little bit on that?
I'm going to backtrack just a hair. In this one too, when you were talking about uh, not realizing that you have more than enough, this being the third decan, Jupiter's moved out of its decan of exaltation too. And so there's ultimately a little bit, it's not falling, obviously it's still in Cancer, but it's working toward that now, right? It's the sun after the peak. It
Mm-hmm.
is definitely technically the darkness taking over the light at that point.
Mm-hmm.
Even though you still have plenty, the reality is that the darkness is taking over.
Yeah.
So, speaking to cups as water, throughout this, I keep thinking about like water being very fluid in a different way to air. Air just covers ground, covers everything, moves very quickly. Water has to be, if water is going to be effective, it needs a container
Mm-hmm.
in some sense.
Yeah.
For water to be nourishing for a person, for an animal, whatever, there has to be a puddle, a pool, a cup, something like that. Otherwise, water uncontained can get very unruly. Doesn't mean it's still not nourishing, like the flooding of the Nile,
Mm-hmm.
it distributes then all of its nutrients and things. But yeah, I feel like water, in order to be effective, almost needs to be harnessed so that its power is more useful. And I think a
Mm-hmm.
cup is an excellent. Otherwise, you can end up with, tide pools, the swirling, you know, um, the crab itself having that hard shell.
Mm-hmm.
And I might be jumping ahead a little bit, but the hard shell to protect the soft inner body, because it's getting tossed around in the tide,
Yeah.
you know, because the water is uncontained and moving the way it wants to, as
Yeah.
opposed to being directed in some sense.
Yeah. No, I think it's a perfect time to talk about it, because like water doesn't have a shape on itself. It
Right.
fills whatever shape it finds, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And also
Mm-hmm.
that water fills every area in our life to
Mm-hmm.
some degree. And so water is the tide pool. Water is the still swamp that breeds mosquitoes. Water is the waterfall. Water is, you know, fluids of the body. I mean, water is life, literally. And so,
Mm-hmm.
um, the crab has its shell. It has that concrete temple that it carries with it on its person,
Mm-hmm.
because it is at home wherever it goes.
Right.
I mean, not to be um, trite or to have a stereotype of Cancer, but a lot of heavily placement cancers that I personally know um, have their cars fully equipped with all sorts of contingencies, whether it's snacks or
Yeah.
books, or like a spare notebook in case they're bored in traffic, or
Mm-hmm.
shopping bags, or like really nice oils to smell. I mean, it's like their cars, if a Cancer drives, a lot of times, I've just known this personally, and this is anecdotal. I'm not saying like it's a prescription, but that
Yeah.
they're going to have their comforts at their disposal wherever they go, and their cars are
Mm-hmm.
like, they're moving crab shells. They're portable homes. And I just feel like there's a reason for it. It's like, because you don't know what circumstances you're going to be in. You don't know if you're going to get a headache, so you're going to bring some Tylenol. You don't know if you're going to be thirsty, so you're always going to have your water bottle. You might have an
Mhm.
extra pair of shoes in case some sort of circumstances change, and that speaks to the
Mhm.
moon. You know, the moon as fortune, as like our experience on Earth changes. That's the only constant is change, and so crabs, cancers as an adaptable animal that are
Yeah.
used to living in water being able to adapt to life's circumstances.
Yeah. I'm chuckling because my car isn't fully stocked with things, but my purse is. At work, I'm Shawna, do you have some Tylenol? Yes, I have Tylenol. Do you have ibuprofen today? Yeah. Do you have gum? Yes.
Mhm.
It's just all the things.
Yeah.
Um, but in my car, it's the making sure there's the charger. I always carry my water bottle with me.
Mhm.
The shopping bags are in there for the grocery store. Like, yeah, so you're just hitting the nail on the head there. I'll fill the stereotype for you.
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
I have one friend. She's like Queen Cancer in my mind. I haven't seen her in a couple of years, but there are so many times during this conversation where I was like, I don't want to perpetuate a trope about cancer, but I really want to
Yeah.
tell this story about her. But
Yeah.
her car is kind of what came to mind. I was like, she is the quintessential crab, and I'm thinking
Yeah.
about her quintessential crabby car of like how
Yeah.
it was like a moving temple. She is what I learned. The little bit that I know about crystals outside of from you, I learned from her. And so her car was like a moving crystal temple, and she
Yeah.
had every mala that she needed at her hands. Like if she
Oh,
needed
oh,
it,
yeah.
it
Yeah.
was like her car was like impressive. um
Yeah. I would say within reach, if you don't fall into I have everything in my car, it's within reach.
mm,
It's there. What direction do I need to go?
yeah,
What leg do I need to use to get what I need?
and maybe
But at
that's
the
what this
same,
Oh, sorry to
go
interrupt,
ahead.
but I just thought maybe that's what this card is showing too. It's like they're not they're waiting for him to take it. Like he has asked
Mhm.
that hand to hold it so that it is within reach. Like I might need that.
Maybe.
Can you just
Yeah.
hold that right here? Because you don't have
Yep.
anything else to do. A disembodied
Yep.
hand in a cloud. Just hang out right here so I don't have to get up to go get those other three cups. It's just right there.
Right. Right. Exactly.
Sorry to interrupt. I
Um,
was like, oh my
no,
God,
no,
that's what
you're
he's
good.
doing.
That's what he's doing.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's perfect. I was just gonna say like my purse because if I'm at work and I've got a headache, I still have 6 or 8 hours to go. I'm not going to be able to work, so the crab will come out.
Mm.
It's like so you have those creature comforts in order to keep going.
Mm-hmm.
If you have just this little piece of home or this little piece of this, you can just keep going no matter where you are.
Yeah.
For me, it's like shoes. They may not be the prettiest shoes, but they're the most comfortable shoes
Yeah.
too.
Yeah.
I'm gonna be comfortable where I'm at,
Yeah.
you know,
That's funny. I went to
for
New
sure.
York and I only brought one pair of shoes. And you commented, you were
Mhm.
like,
Your
boots.
boots,
Why did you wear boots? And
your
I'm
boots.
like, man,
Yeah,
I fashion over form for my shoes.
yes,
I will suffer for
yeah,
23,000 steps. Like it does not matter to
yeah,
me.
yeah. Well, well, you guys know I've been dealing with like some spinal issues this year.
Yeah.
And so it is 100% comfort over anything
Oh yeah.
else.
Yeah.
But even as I look back, before the spinal issues were a thing or whatever, I would so much rather be comfortable
Mm.
than care what anyone else thinks I look like.
Yeah.
There's still that little nagging like, oh, I want to feel put together and I want to do this. But even, at my previous employer, we would do business casual. My dresses, my lab coat, everything fit and looked tailored, but I made sure that fabric could move and
Mm.
I could sit the way I wanted to. And if I needed to go outside and take my shoes off, it wasn't cumbersome.
Mm.
I could put my feet in the grass. Like it's always been, yeah, I want to look good. I want to feel like I'm put together, but I want it to be easy if I need
Mm.
to change.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll say that. So, I have a lot of Taurus placements. And so
Hmm.
Taurus and Cancer have that simpatico of the shared ruler of the moon. And when we think
Hmm.
about the moon as the body and, being able to adapt is a lunar thing, but also just lunar things are soft. And that's one
Yeah.
thing that I will like give a nod to the Taurus on my chart is
Yeah.
that fabric has to feel good. If fabric does not
Yes.
feel good, then it's not getting near me.
Yeah.
And it really won't matter what it looks like if it feels very soft, like those soft fleeces,
Yeah.
before they
Yeah.
get all pillied.
Yes. I hate when that
I
happens.
know, then
I
they're
dread
gone.
washing them.
But the
Then it's
first,
like, ugh.
no, like God,
Yeah.
recoiling. But those
Yeah.
first couple of wears
The
are
best.
the best.
The best.
And
Yeah.
that's why I like silks and linens and really fine
Yes.
cotton, like that sort of a thing is like
Yeah.
that shared embodied appreciation that Taurus
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
and Cancer have. I think it's because of the moon, similar to food.
Yeah.
It's like being able to have luxurious and tasty and smelling good and shareable food
Mhm.
is because of that moon. Like the moon is
Yeah.
like, you're here on earth whether you like it or not, whether you enjoy it or not, you're here on
Hmm.
earth. This is my realm. And so, um, you know,
Feel it.
feel
Yeah.
it.
Feel it.
Yeah.
Feel it. Yeah.
Yeah.
You're talking about fabrics and stuff. I was, I hit up the Bezos for this one because I was
Mhm.
looking for the kiddo and I, but for a new thing for today. But I was so glad when this came in because you just never know what you're going to get. And a lot
Yeah.
of times it's just such cheap fabric. It's so soft. It's just the softest.
Yeah.
So I was so glad. But because again, I want to be comfortable. And we've got a beautiful day actually ahead of us as far as weather goes. So I'm like, yay, I'm gonna wear soft clothes and be outside and it's not supposed to hit 80 because you sweat. And
Yeah.
so how am I going to be comfortable today? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I remember as a kid, anytime we had to go to a craft store, grocery store, like I'm just remember touching everything.
Mm-hmm.
But fabric, like department stores in particular, you'd run your hand through the clothes on the
Yeah.
rack.
Yeah.
That's- yeah,
Yeah.
but
Like piano
also hide in the
keys.
middle of them.
Mm-hmm.
Did you ever do that? Yeah, okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
The
Yeah. My
other,
son, my son would do that in like thrift stores, and I'd be like, get out of there. I don't know what's
yes, yeah, yeah, yeah. I would do it too, though.
yeah.
But yeah, yeah.
Um,
So we're back to our
yeah,
beautiful
we're back
picture
to
here.
this, and it feels so like maybe it's because it's been imbued with this conversation, but it does feel so Cancerian just looking at the spheres and
Mhm.
how like Venus, Mercury, and the moon bring us closest to Earth. And just the feeling of fabrics or
Yeah,
the eating of good food. It's like the
yeah.
moon brings us to Earth. We
Mhm.
didn't talk, you touched on a little bit about like the crabbiness of a crab, but the emotional sphere of Cancer, um like how just in general themes, like when we the tropes against Cancer are emotional, and I feel like that is because the domicile of the moon is emotional Cancer, and it's like that the fluctuations, the tides, the ability to shift,
Mhm.
and that then the moon moves fastest around Earth. It
Mhm.
moves fastest, just changes signs every 2.5 days. So the fluctuations of the moon are big. The way that it serpentines around the sky, it looks like it changes its mind. It feels kind of flighty sometimes or unstable, even though it has a very clear trajectory, if you can
Mhm.
appreciate its serpentine nature. But can you just speak on that a little bit before we close out?
Yeah. So yes, emotional for better or worse, absolutely. Um, but really, when you think of a Cancer person, at least I think this way, um, warm, inviting, like some of the positive things. Um, Home, it's where you belong. I mentioned that before.
Yeah.
Um, Yeah, but oh, I lost my train of thought. Um, with the changeability, there goes my boy, sorry. Um, with the changeability, the moon, it is ever changing, but it always comes back,
Yeah.
and if you experience someone who is being moody, just wait a few minutes. It's
Yeah.
gonna be fine, you
Yeah.
know. But they're also we are also really great at adapting,
Mm.
um, going with the flow. Um, if there's a decision to be made, we can also make it, you
Mm-hmm.
know. We're great at getting things started. There's that tropical or the cardinal
Yeah.
aspect. Really great at getting things started, and I used to kind of maybe feel bad or guilty about not finishing as well.
That's what Leo's
But
for.
it's yeah, I mean that's exactly right.
Yeah.
If someone doesn't start it, no one else can keep it going,
Yeah.
and so okay, let's do this. We got a project to go, let's go. We've got it, we've got the ideas. Okay, now here, do it, you
Yeah.
know. So I think the tropical signs, the cardinal signs are really wonderful at that, Cancer included. Um, but even if we just look at the tide, it's swells sometimes. Sometimes it's right where you need it, and sometimes it's gone, but it's always going to come back.
Yeah.
Just like the moon, it's reliable, and it's not always exactly what you want. You can't
Mm-hmm.
always have that big, beautiful full moon in the sky. Sometimes you don't get enough light, but it's always there.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, if you just think of like putting Cancer on the ascendant, whether it's a theme of
Yeah.
Monday or your own chart, like
Mhm.
looking at what the derived houses are from that Cancer ascendant, you
Yeah.
know, Aries is at the top.
Hmm.
I mean, like Mars and the Sun are up there at the top.
Hmm.
Um, you know, casting light, casting big shadows, but also just kind of being known for that action, and wherever Mars is placed in your chart, that Martian influence is up there at the top, and
Hmm.
that ability to decide that starts change, that starts the turning of the light, I think
Hmm.
comes from the fact that Mars is up there. um and Mars, if we think of just like day sect, night sect, okay, well, the night sect is the moon, ruling Cancer is the luminary of sect, and the malefic of the lunar sect is Mars, so it
Hmm.
is kind of an ally, and in misdirected or martyred a little bit,
Hmm.
Mars can come out being very aggressively crabby, but it also can just be that push. We talked about labor earlier, that you go through that moment of transition when
Yeah.
you're like, I can't do this. Like, I'm not going to have a baby today. I can't birth this baby. It's like there's this recoiling back of, what am I doing? How did I get into this position? It's a real
Hmm.
frightening moment. And
Hmm.
there's this recoiling back, almost like the water that gets pulled back in the tide right before that crest comes,
Yep. Yep.
and that crest comes from that momentum and that fervor of Mars.
Hmm.
Mars is fallen in Cancer because it exalts in Capricorn, but there is that Mars at the top of the chart influence that I always consider. Thinking of Cancer ascendant, thinking about the thema mundi specifically, but it also just happens to be your configuration.
It is. Yeah.
you know
Yeah. And it's interesting if you place that Mars in Aries, then you're creating a square to both Cancer and to Capricorn. You're getting that real stark tension, but
mm-hmm.
that's needed. It's like if you think of a car, you need that spark, that combustion in order to get moving.
Yeah.
And I think that square aspect really provides that.
Yeah. The squares are the nature of Mars. It's like that
Mhm.
grit around which the pearl aggregates. It's like you only get that.
Mhm.
And the fixed signs, are there to continue on. It's like somebody has to
Right.
start it. And
Yes.
so it takes that bravery or stupidity or both at the
Well,
same time
one and the same.
to like get it going. And then the fixed signs
Yeah.
are like, just give me my marching orders so that I can fulfill
Right.
this. And then the
Right.
mutables are like, is this a good idea, or how
Mhm.
can we make it better, or I need to
Yeah.
be able to pass this on to the next one, or whatever it
Yeah.
is. I mean, like, we all have our roles, and we can fall into the traps of a trope and description, but Cardinal is there to kind of to be that hinge, to be that instigator. I like the idea of combustion for that.
Mhm. Yeah.
Well, I feel like we have come full circle
Yeah.
with Cancer. um, and I can't help but now look at this image with the Cancer sigil kind of imbued on it. And then in
Yeah.
post-op, I might kind of overlay the Cancer symbol
Yeah.
on it because I really do
Okay.
like it.
That could be cool. Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
so thanks again for sharing a
Yeah.
little bit of your Cancer crap. I like that you had to kind of switch. We got two
We
phases
did.
of you
Yep.
because it
Yep.
got
We
too
did.
bright.
I was just going to acknowledge I just did a 180,
Yep.
literally.
Mm-hmm.
How crabby of me. Um, I didn't, when I picked my spot, the sun was not in my face. And then all of a sudden it was like glowing and I couldn't see the screen anymore. And now,
Yeah.
do a quick shift and it's behind me.
Yeah.
So,
Well, that's the
yeah,
solstice, the sun being
yeah,
so high it blinds you
it's
and
beautiful.
creating those stark shadows. So that
Yep.
was, I
Yeah.
like when it's
Kind of
astrology
perfect.
good.
Yep. Yep. There you go.
um,
Yeah. Well, thank you so much
yeah,
for
yeah.
inviting me to chat about all things crab.
And can you share again, like, how do people find you? What
Yeah,
offerings do you
sure.
have? Like, what projects do you have going on? What books are you
Yeah.
reading? Like, and then also, since you are, kind of the crystal queen in our circle, like, what crystals do you use this time of year? Which ones do you associate with Cancer? Like, what comes to mind?
Yeah. Yeah. Um, I kind of like the Sphinx in there, or the Sphinx eye. Sphinx. What's the
Sphinxes?
plural of Sphinx? Sphinxes? Sphinxes? No, that's weird. It gets a little too close to something else, I think.
Mhm.
I really, really, really like selenite, and I really, really, really like tourmaline. There's kind of that cleansing and that
Yeah,
freeing and that cutting of ties. There
I
you
have
go with
both.
your little
Yeah.
lightsaber there. But that's just it. What I love about selenite is how reflective and refractive it is.
Mm,
And it feels so lunar because of the that reflection. And it plays with light so much. It's so much
mm,
fun. Um, but the tourmaline just kind of brings that back down, gives you that new moon feel, actually, now that I'm thinking about it. But it's keeping your feet planted and still freeing yourself
mm.
with the selenite. So I love that. But all the sparkly rocks, yeah.
And I have
um,
the black moonstone that I got that you said has, let me look, open my, I
it's a
can't see
lab,
me.
yeah. So I wonder what
It's
kind of
got that,
flash you have in it.
you can there you go. You see a little bit of that
There it
flash
is.
there. Yeah.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Ooh, sorry for my weird close up there. Um, I'm like leaning into the screen. Um, yeah, but let's see, Threads and Twitter or X, whatever we call it these days, little Tweety Bird. It's at Smart Astro. There's an underscore, so Smart spelled normal underscore Astro, ASSTRO. My website is smartastro.com. Again, two S's. Um, all your typical astro readings, natal forecasting, synastry, which I love, love, love looking at family charts.
Mm.
So if anyone wants to do that, that would be amazing, even just for my own curiosity. I love seeing those connections and how things break up and come together in a family.
It's not
Um,
Cancer coded at all.
no, not at all. And yeah, I've got some pre-recorded tarot offerings there. I'll have some more to come soon, and I'm working on building my store with crystals.
Okay.
I do have some things, they're just not published yet, so that's coming. I do for this month, since we're recording it in June, I'm not sure, maybe I'll keep the code going. Because when is this one? When are you gonna release, Christa?
Right before solstice.
Right before
Yep.
solstice. You know what? So I'll have a code. I'll have a code for
Okay.
that. We'll make it solstice 24.
Okay.
Um, yeah, for a discount on any services. Um, yeah, so that's where I'm at.
Awesome. I will
Yeah,
throw out
thank
that
you.
Shawna is one of the Astera Sophia Kairos
Oh, yeah. How
members.
could I forget? Yeah, yeah,
We didn't intend to do it, but the four main members each hold their sun in a different element, and so
yeah,
Shauna is our token water sign. But
yeah.
she kind of collects and does the newsletter that gets sent out, and so always puts a really nice crystal grid, kind of drawing down the moon for us through the crystals, which is appreciative. And
Love.
yeah, thanks so much for being here today and being my
Yeah,
friend. And happy Pride.
yeah, thanks. Back at ya. Yep, strong ally here. My kiddo is about to have a solar return and about to be 14, and this has been a question on their mind for oh 5-ish years now. It's been a while. So this will be our third annual Pride Parade.
That's
Yeah. So thank you so much. Thank you also for being my friend and part of my little witch family. And yeah, I just appreciate you letting me do this.
of course. All right. So with that, we will let the dogs bark.